created our component and we mounted that on the page, right, by you know passing the counter component inside our main layout. But what if we want to create a page out of it, right? So for example, if you see, the root is using welcome, so why don't we create a blade file for a new page? Okay, so instead of layouts.app, which is our actually the main layout file, why don't we create a blade file first? So livewire.blade.php, and then in here what we can do is get rid of this and do yield content. Okay, and then here do extends layout.app, and in this section called content, why don't we load this, and in here we'll just have livewire. So what we are basically saying is, on this URL load this view. This view extends the layouts.app, and that layouts.app is yielding content, and that's what we have defined in here. So ideally nothing should change. And now let's just add some props to it. So something like name is Amitav Roy. Okay, and in here we can get that data in the mount property as $name. So to make it accessible, we can do something like this, right? We have name as a public property, and on mount we do this name equals name. Okay, and inside counter.blade, why don't we print $name, hit refresh, it is coming up, and let's try to bind this as well, maybe. So inside here we will have input wire model is name, and now I can change it. So you can see this is basically a continuous binding of this variable in the text field as well, which means first of all the component is getting the prop, okay, from the blade file. Okay, I am sending it through this thing, okay, as a prop, and then the counter is able to print it. Why? Because the counter.php is kind of assigning that variable to a public property called name again, and any public property inside a component is available to the view part of that component, which is this blade file, right? So counter.blade could use $name without any problem, because $name is a public property, and because it is, we have done a wire.model in this input field, so anything which is going to change will basically mean that the data will change and reflect everywhere. So this thing changes on this particular change, right? Now there's one important thing which we need to understand: what is happening when I am making any change in here. Sorry, so let me do an inspect element. I would like this over here, and inside network tab, is there a way to clean things up? Yes. So now I'll just remove 1, 2, 3. Okay, what is happening? Let's look at the requests. So these are definitely not complete HTML. Now there's something going on. It says ID, name of the component is here, the DOM is here, from prefetch, redirect to, and a lot of things. So what is this? And the important part is also to look at the checksum. So this is where I think we need to look at the documentation and understand what is happening in here. So I'll go to the security so that you know what is happening. So basically, to prevent users from tampering with Livewire request between component dehydration and rehydration, Laravel passes a checksum, which means when the change is passed from the browser to the Laravel application, a checksum is created and that is being checked at the backend, and then based on that the front end receives the data. In this way, basically they are trying that any third party cannot tamper with the data and expect something else. So yeah, that kind of security is in place, apart from things like it has CSRF token validations and sanitizations on the request fields, things like that. So yeah, I mean, those things are in place, but in terms of security, I think this is very important for you to understand what is happening. And then the DOM is coming up, right? And what Laravel Livewire does is it gets this DOM, right? And using some smart DOM diff, it understands what needs to be changed, and only that piece of the page is re-rendered and the rest of the thing is not touched, and hence we feel as if it's an SPA, right? This is I'd say quite common if you look at GitHub, right? This is something which even the creator showed during his presentation. So I'm just trying to show you the same thing, that even GitHub in a way uses similar kind of implementation. So if I let's just say do this, okay, there's a page refresh for sure, but there were certain right if you see, this is not an entire page which is coming as response, right? These are DOM elements which are coming with just divs, which means GitHub is also, although not completely working like an SPA where it sends back JSON and then the rendering engine, some front end like maybe React or Vue is using it, but rather it sends HTML which is then appended to the DOM using some DOM diff mechanism, and we feel as if it's a SPA kind of an approach. But yeah, so this is how Livewire handles the changes. Now, one thing which you can also do is, as told in my last video as well, you can either use this @Livewire kind of a syntax, or you can even mount that component like this: Livewire counter name equals Amitav Roy. Sorry, I'm making mistake in my own name, which is very strange. Anyway, so if I refresh now, ideally nothing should change, right? Yeah, and that's true, and I can expect the same behavior happening. However, now this is a tag, right? We can use this, and you need to understand that name and colon name is very similar to how even Vue.js works, where the semicolon means it's a variable literal. I mean, it will not consider it as a string, but rather a variable name, and hence it says that it is not getting those variables. Whereas if I remove that colon and refresh, it will now treat it as a string, and it can send it across. You need to be aware that through props you can send strings, but arrays and objects or collections, if you have this kind of a syntax. But yeah, there are certain limitations, and so I would suggest you go through the documentation before you try different kinds of things. The next thing is, obviously, if you would have noticed when I type, right, so JHONDOE, I am making so many requests. Now Livewire by default have a 150 milliseconds debounce to it. But if you feel, like if you have a search implementation, then you may want that the debounce is higher. So in that case, what you can do is you can play around. I'll go into the component counter, and in this .model.debounce, let's say it's 500 milliseconds. Okay, so what now will happen is I'll just refresh. As you can see, it does wait a little longer, right? This is one way of doing things. You can increase this debounce to maybe even 3 seconds or 1 second, whatever you want to. Or we can also do lazy. In this case, what is going to happen is this will not trigger a change, but if I focus out, right, it makes a call, which means the change is only going to happen when the user does something else. For example, click somewhere outside, or focuses out through tab. So yeah, this is one way you can how do I say, you can change the behavior, right? This helps you in a way that if you feel that your search might get very heavy, you can change this properties. Okay, one more important thing which you need to keep in mind is you are sending, let's say, the counter, right? This name is one property which right now I'm sending through a props from the Livewire component, right? Let's have one more property. Let's just say I have public $message. Okay, and then this dot message equals hello world, like so. Now I'll go into my counter blade, and in here my message $message. Okay, if I refresh, so yeah, nothing very fancy. I'm sending data through the public property. But however, you need to understand that you should not ideally have any sensitive information as public property. For example, if you have any database password or any secret key coming to the component as a property, right? You need to understand that that's not a secured way of transferring information to your component, because in the end that data is being transferred through JavaScript, which means this will be visible somewhere here, right? So actually not this one. Let's say I'm typing my password, okay, and I did a change, right? So if you see, this request data has this entire value. Okay, it has that checksum. So this is the checksum which was sent, some mechanism to for Livewire to confirm. All those things are fine, but this variable is being passed, and when it is processed by the server, it is coming back as a response as well. And you don't ideally want this information to contain any secret information, because then it can be visible, right? So yeah, do keep that in mind. Then one more thing which I want to show you is like now we have name, message, and maybe one more parameter, date. Okay, like so. In here I can do this. However, inside my mount property, you can see this is becoming a little tedious, right? I mean, do I need to really do this? Actually, no. What we can do is, I think there's a short method called this fill, and in there I can have name as $name, message as $message, and then I can get rid of this. Oops, I copied the wrong thing. Like so. So now if I come back, I'm getting the same output, which means filling the properties like this and individual will result in the same thing. One more thing which you need to understand is, as I told you, all the public properties are being available to the view. However, if I have any protected property, protected dollar, what can I have? Address. Okay. And let's just say here I set the address as Vashi, Navi Mumbai, something like that. And if I try to, for some reason, my print it here, it will fail. Undefined variable address. And why is that? Because this property, this protected or private, these properties are not available to the component as view variables. Only the public ones are possible. So if I do this, this is fine. There's no problem with that. However, private and protected properties are not available. Okay, so this is how generally you will work with passing data, playing around with the variables and things like that. Now let's say I'll just remove all these things. Okay, I don't need the name. I'll clean this up as well, and in here I'll remove this name. I can remove now, and component prop is removed as well. This is clean. Now because it is a counter component, finally I think we should look at creating some counter behavior. So I'll have a public property called count. Okay, and let's just say this count equals 0, and obviously if I print count here, I will be able to see the value 0. This is not a problem. I mean, this is something which we have done. But let's just say I have a button. Okay, I have a button which says add. Okay, I add click and increment. This is a function which I need to write in here, and I'll do this count plus plus. So now if I refresh and click, you can see it is making these AJAX calls, and it is automatically incrementing the value. Okay, and the page doesn't refresh. I mean, we are still on the same page. So this is how the magic starts. I have not written a single line of JavaScript. However, I got live updates on my page. Similarly, I can play around, have a decrement, count minus minus. Okay, copy this function maybe, and so add, remove, and if you want, we can also have something like if $this count less than 1, return. So what is going to happen? This is not going to make any change. I have 1, it will take it to 0, but then it doesn't go to the negative. So all these things, right, you can very easily do. And one more thing which you can do with this live change is, let's just say I have an input field wire model name. Okay, I'll tag it here, and let's just add that public property in our component class. On mount we don't do anything, so by default it is, or let's just say I'll use fill $this fill. In that array I have count as 0 and name is null. I'll get rid of this. So by default name is null. Okay, and as we have seen, we have an hook called updated. Okay, if you go into the documentation, you will see updated is one of the hooks which we can work with. It gives us the name of the variable and the value. So I'm expecting name, value, and what I'm trying to do is, if the name of the variable is name, okay, and the value, or rather the string length of that value is greater than or equal to 3, what I'm going to do is this user equals user where, okay, I will do a like query, name like, let's just do this name and then percentage, and we will pick up the first record just to show some data. So we have used name in here and we need user as well, so public $user, and the user by default is, again, I'm not doing anything with it, so just to give you a difference of how we can play around with the data. So inside a new p tag I'll just do name as $user name and a br email $user email, and this entire thing can be inside an if block if not let's just say name, or rather user equals null, and if, and I'll just take it back. What I'll do is name can be empty and user, let's do null, because we are doing a check here on null, right? We have an if condition on null, so by default if the user is not null it will try to render, otherwise it won't. So we will not have the problem of on mount, let's say when there is no user, it will try to render something and it fails and it will start complaining about things. So let's just see, this is my documentation. I reload here, and why don't I also, because this is a search, we would expect that it's not done on every keystroke, so I'll do lazy and am click outside. It makes that ajax call but doesn't do anything because our condition is not fulfilled. It says the string length should be greater than or equal to 3. So now if I do amit, okay, the user is not imported. I guess sometimes because I work with PHP Storm, I just kind of forget that thing, and that creates those kinds of problems. But anyway, so I have 2 users, I know, and hence I can play around with it. So you can see we can do a lot of stuff. I mean, if you can do a search and then even you can create some kind of a drop down in here. If the user clicks on it, then you show the details, all kinds of things. But yes, I basically wanted you to understand what are the possibilities when we have this kind of binding and hooks available to play around. I can also do something like instead of updated, this is happening because I'm checking the name because it is updated, which means on every value it will change. But I can do something like updating or updated and then name. I think what then I can do is I can get rid of this and it should work. Let's see. I'm also trying it for the first time and I don't know whether it will work or not, but it does. So here rest of the functionality is working properly. I think what is now happening is only we are looking for a change in the name property and not on any other field, and that is the optimization that we did by changing the hook. So yeah, I think you should play around with these things and see what are the possibilities. I'll try to cover up a lot more things before we actually start working on something solid and a small little app. But yeah, I think before that we should explore what are the possibilities which we have with Livewire. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video and if you like this series, do click on the thumbs up icon, subscribe to my channel, and yeah, share on social media so that more and more users can know about this wonderful library.